Welcome, Serge.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, and thanks for being on my podcast, guest number 2.
Sweet. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Serge, let's start off with an origin story. So just talk about a bit about where were you born, where did you grow up, and then kind of how did you transition into the world of film, television, acting?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Calgary, Alberta.
Yep.
Canada, obviously. And I was always a performer.
Okay.
Since I was a kid. Whether it was my teachers not being happy for the fact that I was, because I was definitely a class clown. I mean, I was in detention all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I was in detention a lot. I was that termed ADD kid.
Right.
But I was always finding ways to just entertain. I was definitely always artistic. I was in band. I sang in choir. I was drawing all the time. Even starting in, I think it was like grade 2 or 3. I remember I was doing plays even then.
Right.
There was kind of like an impromptu theater / drama program in my elementary, and I just was like, give me the big parts. Like, I remember one of the years too. I dressed as a girl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a play called Santa is Missing, and I played an elf and I played a girl, which was like a doll that was inside of a toy store.
Okay.
And I just remember I didn't give a shit about it. As a kid, you didn't have that notion of being like, oh, I shouldn't dress like a girl.
Right.
I didn't give a shit. I was like,
Right.
cool, I'm just performing.
Right.
And I loved it. I was addicted to it. And I did drama in all through junior high. Back then, it was like that shitty makeup that like it just couldn't form scars properly.
Right.
But it was fun to just kind of learn that. I learned how to make puppets, and then at that point, I started like having fun with voices. Like I think Elmo was like so popular, so
Right.
like I made a puppet. I'd be like, "Oh, hi guys," and I was like just playing with it. And so yeah, just growing up, I was just always performing in something. Whether it was band, choir, or in plays. And then around high school, I kept wanting to do it, but my dad was like, no, I'd rather you do band or whatever. But
Right.
at that point, I was like, oh, I guess dreams are shattered for now.
For a second, I thought you said you were going to say your dad was going to say, no, you got to be a doctor or engineer, but your dad was encouraging you to go into music as opposed to
Yeah,
acting?
it was weird.
That's still a pretty cool dad.
It kind of, but he still didn't listen to what I wanted. Like I played alto saxophone.
Oh, cool.
And I played clarinet before that. But I don't like even now. I don't have that yearning to go pick it up.
Right.
But if you were like, hey, we're gonna sing karaoke, I'm down. If
Right.
hey, we're gonna get together and do this script workshop, I'm in.
Right.
So it's not that I don't have a love for music. I do.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't the same as I had for performing and making people feel something or laugh.
Right.
There was automatically just that connection to it.
Right.
And it's funny you talk about the doctor thing. So I know we're going to digress a little bit, but I was in the military for 2 years.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Was that right after high school or?
it was just as I was finishing. So I was younger than everyone else. I graduated, or I was done grade 12 when I was 17.
Okay.
So I made my dad sign the form. But his stipulation with it was I had to be a medic in the military.
Okay.
I couldn't go infantry. I couldn't go engineer. I couldn't do anything. I
Right.
had to be a medic.
Why? Why?
That was just his choice. So I wanted him to sign the thing, and
Was he secretly hoping that you might decide to go to medical school after that or something?
maybe. I mean, I was a sports trainer, so we had like a university accredited program in my high school.
Okay.
So I did sports medicine all through high school, and then almost was an apprentice trainer for the Calgary Stampeders.
Oh wow.
And then when I didn't end up getting that, long story short, the punter got traded to BC.
Oh really?
So he couldn't
Wow.
give me the job.
Okay.
And then, I just was like, okay, I'll try military, emergency services, that kind of shit. And then my dad was just like, okay, but only as a medic. So I was like, well, I'll let him sign the thing and maybe I'll do whatever I want after.
Right.
But I didn't bother sticking around that long, 2 years. And honorable discharge, no issues with that. But it was good training. It was still fun. I mean, to this day, and we'll get into it about how I got into stunts, but
Right.
the military training came into play with many different things.
Oh, I can imagine. And just the discipline, right? And I think the number one thing is just having that discipline
and an understanding of like weapons,
right?
Like just having an actual understanding of it, not people that go take a PAL program. No offense to those people,
right?
That go take a PAL program on the weekend and think that they can, handle a weapon.
Right.
I was gonna say car, but
yeah, that's a part of it too.
Yeah.
So what was your introduction to, I don't know if you first started in the stunt world or in the acting world, but how did you get into all of that?
We did a little bit of like stage combat stuff during, theater and drama. Obviously there was some physicalities to it, through movements and everything. But I never thought I would ever do stunts. That was that was never my my focus. I didn't even think it was a thing. Like I didn't have that concept. Mm-hmm. Like I loved action films growing up. Like Jean-Claude Van Damme was always an influence. I loved the Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, like all that. Even actually at the beginning, Steven Seagal, for a little bit.
He was cool for a bit.
He was cool for a bit until you realized some stuff.
Yeah.
But anyways, we won't get into that. So talking about the weapon stuff, the way I got into it. So, I was always an actor. I loved acting, but I've always had a physicality to me. Mm-hmm. Like I grew up fighting. I didn't live in the greatest neighborhood. I got in fights all the fucking time. When I was around, I think it was like 18, I started Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And then at that time, my sensei helped me to understand that Japanese jiu-jitsu isn't the only martial art. Go learn other martial arts. And this is at a time where that was not a thing that you would ever say. Right. It was you just did one discipline.
Yeah, because a lot of martial arts are very insular, right?
Yes.
It's like their
not as much anymore.
Right.
But it traditionally, yes.
Right.
It comes from that old lineage of you have to have pride in whatever style that you would do. Right. All the famous martial arts movies, from China. Right. Like, oh, I'm hard style, you're soft style. I'm crane, you're like all that stuff. Right. It comes from that pride, that place. Right. But he was awesome. He brought Kali, which is a Filipino martial arts with the sticks, if you've ever seen that. Yep. Bruce Lee actually learned that from Dan Inosanto. Okay. So I think it was Game of Death it was, when he had the sticks and he like takes on some guys. That comes from Kali, which was from Dan Inosanto. So my sensei, who's Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, brought in Kali.
Oh, cool.
And then I started asking him about, Muay Thai and striking and different stuff. Because we did strikes, but most of our strikes were a strike to get someone down to the ground. Now everyone knows Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Right. But Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is the grandfather to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay.
So, yeah, wasn't it the Japanese community in Brazil that started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, there was he did a style which was called Kano Jiu-Jitsu. Okay. His name was Maeda. I forget his first name off the top of my head. So he was actually teaching the Gracies this form of, it was actually a judo form, but it was so close to Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. But it was actually a form of judo. Okay. So he taught them, they would do these demonstrations and stuff in like the squares, and they would do a challenge, which is actually where the derivative of the Gracie challenge came from. Was that, they would be in the court and they would challenge whoever, and I think Maeda challenged a boxer or something like that. It was one of the first more documented ones, and showed how effective it was. Right. And then the Gracies ended up adopting it. It was Helio Gracie, who was the smallest of the brothers, who adopted the ground, or Nawaza. So Nawaza in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is ground, So the ground fighting came from that. Okay. And so that's why now we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now it's become more of the sport form. Right. At the beginning, the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I think they still do it now from what I've seen, is they still have a lot of the starting from standing, the self-defense aspects of it. If I was throwing a punch at you, how I would, counter that to taking you down, then breaking your arm, or submitting you, or controlling you. Right. So that's all from there. So now getting back to the stunt thing, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu has been my fundamental saving grace, because the first thing you learn to do in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is how to fall. Right. All the throws in judo come from it, and break falls is at your white belt level. So you're just learning break falls, and yeah, you're not going to be out in the street and slap the pavement like you would see in the on a mat, but that's
Right.
just for show. But in the street, you're not slapping it. Yes, you're stopping your momentum from going, but I've even like slipped on black ice, and that saved me from like smacking my head.
Right, because it's just so programmed into you.
It's just so programmed in.
That's a great example of how martial arts can, because like a lot of stunt work is not a lot, but like knowing how to fall is critical, right?
I think it's probably like the base of the most important part of it. And there's guys I've seen that like I can tell probably need work on break falls. They fall, but you can tell that it's because what it is, it's that repetitive motion.
Right.
And that repetitive motion can eventually end up being bruises. Now, martial arts, you have bruises all the time. It's
right.
Like, it's like whatever. Yeah, it's such an important part of it. And later on, we could talk more about my advice of upcoming or people that want to do stunts. I'll give a bunch of different advice for those people. But to go back to your original point about how I got into the stunt thing, as you were asking, was in 2010. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. This is advice that I was given to me by big actors, named actors. I don't need to mention who they are. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to name drop.
Sure.
But what they all said to me, because I was doing so many things at the time. I was dancing in music videos. I was modeling. I was doing fitness modeling stuff at the time. And then I was trying to get into acting. So I was doing so many different things.
Was this in Calgary?
Some was in Calgary, and then I was in Toronto at that time.
Okay.
I had one of the biggest fitness modeling agencies in New York wanting to bring me down there. It was like, oh, you can stay at the modeling house while you're doing your dance stuff, and then you can start going out. And this guy, he's the one that gets all those men's health covers, all that stuff. So he was wanting me to live down there, and so I was being pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah.
So 2010, what changed it over for me? It might have even just been a little bit before that, but there was an M. Shyamalan movie that was filmed called Devil.
Okay.
And
did that come out? I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it came
Devil?
out. Yeah,
oh,
it was like one of them was the devil inside the elevator.
The thing happens in an elevator, right?
Pretty much most of it's in the elevator.
No,
in the office building.
Right.
The Raimi brothers.
Okay,
they directed it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually I fell asleep behind M. Shyamalan's chair. I was
really?
Yeah, I was.
That was shot in Toronto.
That was shot in Toronto.
Okay.
I was so tired. I woke up with like drool, and I went like this, and I looked at him, and he just like smiled and laughed, and just like walked off. But that was like one of those moments I was like, oh, did I just fuck myself?
Yeah.
But it was during that time there was a couple different actors that were on there that all ended up saying the same thing to me, because they were during conversations like, oh, like how long you been getting into acting, blah blah blah. And I explained to them like all the other things I was doing, and they all said the same thing. I was like, it's good that you have multiple talents, but put your energy into one thing.
Right.
Don't say no to the other things if it comes up, but stop putting your energy all over the place.
Right.
And that didn't sink in right away. It took me a little bit. And then where the light bulb moment happened was, I think it was like for season 3 of Flashpoint, I had a reoccurring role audition. Okay. And at the time I was working in a restaurant.
Right.
The typical thing that all of us actors tend to do.
Sure.
And it's Friday. The audition's on Monday. So typical restaurant, I got to work Friday and Saturday and Sunday and doing the double shifts, right? And I'm trying to prepare, and I think it's like, for now I laugh at it. It was only 8 pages. I say only 8 because now that's not a big deal.
Right.
But at that time I was like, Jesus, fuck, this is like the biggest amount. It may have even been more than that. But anyways, 8 from what I remember. And I just go, how the heck am I going to serve all these people every single day, putting all my energy into that, and then prepare for this audition, going against people that's all they do is just put their energy into it. And that was a light bulb moment for me. I went in, I did decent with the audition, like definitely not as good as I probably could have done, but I hit at least the emotional notes that I wanted to.
Right.
But that was a moment when I went, I need to quit working in the restaurant. And I decided I was going to do background work.
Right.
Just be in the industry.
Sure.
Absorb everything that I possibly could. And I worked on Flashpoint. I worked on Nikita. I worked on all these different shows. And then Total Recall was about to be filmed in Toronto. And I was like, oh, cool. We all love the Arnold version
yeah.
of it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I remember reading up and seeing like they were going to, go closer to the book and that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, this seems like a fucking awesome. And then they had auditions. And the auditions were to be like these robots.
Okay. So would that be like a stunt actor audition?
That was, I think they had them mainly as a stunt contract.
Okay.
Stunt contract and then SSE, or Special Skills Extra.
Got it.
Here in BC or in Vancouver, they call it Special Abilities Extra.
Okay.
So that would have been my first SSE gig if I would have booked it.
Right.
Which I did, but I'll get there. So I auditioned for it. At that time, I wasn't small enough in the waist for the robots.
Okay.
The robots were like very like slender looking. But I was good for the military looking guys or whatever.
Okay.
But anyways, so I ended up getting SSE because of my military stuff.
Okay.
It was like one of those happenstance things. I was just in the right place at the right time. And they were just like, who knows how to shoot or whatever. And I was like, well, I do. And I was by the front and they're like, okay, you're going to be shooting. So I was like, okay, cool. And at this time, so it was a new weapon too. It was called a Vector.
Okay.
It's about 1,400 rounds per minute, which is insane. And it's 44 caliber bullets. And a lot of people don't know blanks and stuff like that. So now blanks are a scary thing. You've heard of things happening and accidents, stuff like that. But people don't realize that it still creates the same concussive force that any other bullet would do.
Right.
It's the same amount of gunpowder.
You mean when you get hit, or when you're fired?
You're not necessarily getting hit, or you shouldn't be getting hit with anything.
Of course.
Like there's stuff that does fly out the end. Sometimes a little bit of the shrapnel can come flying out. It's mainly gunpowder and dust. Sometimes the little cap can fly out,
right?
Which is usually why you don't aim it at the person. You actually aim it just slightly off,
right?
And the camera angle plays to make it seem like it is,
right?
But there's also safety distances, right? Like a 44 caliber, full load at that. I'm not going to be shooting at you from this distance,
right?
That's probably electronic blanks. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, it's a crazy concussive force, and there was some, a lot of craziness that was going on just in general. But to be thrust into that was like, okay, cool, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
So what I had to do for that one at the end of the day, because normally, if there's an upgrade, they come and they talk to you.
Yeah.
No one was coming to talk to me. And I was like, I had one of those moments that I was like, well, they clearly are not going to upgrade me. Right. So I went and talked to one of the ADs and I was like, hey, they told me to be shooting or whatever. And they're like, who did? And told them who it was. And they're like, oh, well, he actually doesn't have the power to do it. It's me that should have been saying it. So it was like one of those situations.
Okay.
And I was like, all right. I'm like, listen, I understand. And here's the other thing that's a disclaimer for a lot of the people that I think really need to understand is that you need to understand your industry a lot better. Understand what an upgrade is and what's not. And I'm going to get into that when we get into the stunt stuff, especially.
Yep.
Because there's people that mess it up for other people in the industry that actually deserve an upgrade when it does happen.
And they don't ask for it, and then that sets the standard. And then
or when they actually do ask for it, they're so sick of people just asking for the upgrades that it's just they're so easy to dismiss when it happens. Like I've even had another show where I was originally just picture casted. I wasn't supposed to say anything or whatever, and then I ended up having a principal amount of lines. I had to fight for that upgrade too.
Right.
So it does happen, but it's one of those things where don't just ask for an upgrade every single time. But in this case, it was one of those things where, you're using me for my military stuff and I know how to shoot. Mm-hmm. So I had to ask then. I was like, listen, I'm not one of those people that just asked for it. Like obviously I was shooting.
Yep.
This is the only thing that I do. And I just was honest.
Right.
Like,
100%. I mean, as I mentioned to you, going to set as an Oslo, I get asked by background performers all the time who want to be upgraded.
Yeah.
And 75% of the times they have not met the criteria. And it's clearly defined.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get an upgrade, which can sometimes spoil it for the other 25 who are then dismissed, like you said. Or there just needs to be a lot of general awareness and education in terms of what are the specific criteria, right?
Yeah. And that comes from first self-education.
Right.
And another part of it comes from just people are in such a rush.
Right.
And we'll get into that aspect later, but people are in such a rush just to make it happen.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Right.
So, and I think that's the thing, is like people are just in such a rush. They just want to get it. They think that having that means that you've made it.
Right.
And this it that everyone wants to make, but
Right.
there's no such thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, so when I was on that and I was seeing so like, you know, I ended up working with Len Wiseman closely. I was one of Bryan Cranston's guards there for a bit.
Okay.
So, you know, talking to Bryan Cranston, I was like, wow, this is cool.
Right.
He was such a nice, down-to-earth guy.
Was that on Total Recall?
That was on Total Recall,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then Kate Beckinsale was there. Sorry. And then, you know, Len Wiseman was directing. He did all the Underworld, and watching Colin Farrell and Jessica Biel. It was cool to watch how they did their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool to just be a part of that. And then I was watching the stunt guys do their thing, you know, getting shot with blanks falling down.
Right.
I ended up laying in this rainwater while the 50 caliber, there was 250 caliber machine guns underneath the helicopter that were just like shooting at us. And just remember like just the whole reverb of just everything. But there was a stunt guy there named Ernest Jackson who actually works here.
Okay.
I ended up having a conversation with him just because I saw what he was doing, and I was like, oh, cool. That seems interesting.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to him about it. And he was so approachable. It was really easy to just talk to him. And, you know, I asked him how he got into it. I think I asked him, not too much. Like, I was still being professional to a point. But, you know, just enough just to get some more information about how he got into it. And what was one of the other things? I don't even think that, you know what, to be honest, I don't even think there was anything specific that I was like, oh, my God. It was just how he was as a person.
Right.
That just made me like go, oh, this is cool.
Okay, so that was kind of like how you just got into the whole world of
that was my eyes being open to the world of it.
Right. So then, what were the next steps that you took?
Yeah,
that
this is where it gets such an interesting thing. So right after we wrapped Total Recall,
yep.
A couple of my other buddies who knew me from acting
mm-hmm.
was like, hey, there's this feature film that's being done. You should try for one of the parts, but you should try stunts. Yeah. Because of your martial arts background. I was like, huh, that's exactly what I was looking at with Total Recall. Yeah. I'm like, sure. So I messaged one of the guys who was like the lead on it. We're actually best friends now. His name's Craig Henry. He was. Oh
yeah, I know Craig. Yeah. The tall guy, right? Yeah, Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have met him at the boxing.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I got.
Very positive guy. That's what I remember about him. Very positive and just like a lot of energy. And, yeah. Great guy. I'll just move that out to create noise.
The clicking. Yeah. The clicking from the coaster.
So go on. So Craig.
Yeah. So I auditioned for a pilot with one of the girls that was acting in it, and then one of my other buddies was doing stunts in it. He was like one of the leaders of the gangs or whatever. The concept was kind of cool. It was like you had to get, you know, I think it was 12 blocks to get, or no, 11 blocks? 11 blocks to get to where he needed to get to. But to get through there, you had to go through all these different gang territories.
Okay.
So there was homages to like the Warriors. There was homages to District B12.
Right.
You know, there was all these different little things, even to Old Boy.
Okay. That's one of my favorite films.
Yeah. So we did. I wonder if it's actually still on there, but we did one take of fighting of 6.5 minutes long on a dolly shot.
Oh wow!
Just going back and forth, kind of like the hallway scene.
Okay.
I think we beat the record for the longest take or whatever, and it was freaking crazy. So, and the way that we did it too is like we'd basically choreograph the fight sequences on the weekend. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. Mm-hmm. Like we did, but we did it. Like, you know, like. And we would just choreograph these fight scenes on the weekend. Each gang had a different feel to it, so you'd have to be thinking about whatever it was. And we all had different martial arts backgrounds. So we were all putting in whatever we could think of. And, you know, there was knives and guns and bow staffs and sticks and just straight up fisticuffs. And, we just basically guerrilla filmed this. We got sidewalk permits when we needed to. We would film it at night. So this is October in Toronto, going all the way up to, I think it was like November, I think. Even December, and it was freaking cold.
Yeah.
And so there was, I can't remember how many, there was at least 30 of us that were on this film doing stunts. And then I ended up being in every gang. I had different hair styles for each one. Like I slowly lost my hair. I went from having hair to eventually
completely shaved?
To basically shaved with a mohawk, like the warrior style. Had a mohawk with like paint across my face and stuff.
Cool.
And the director himself had to introduce himself to me every single time because he thought I was a different person. Yeah. I was like, yo, it's Serge. And he was like, oh shit, you look so different. So from that, just, the 30 of us being non-union at that time,
right,
making this film just because we just wanted to do it. And I think pretty much now, I'm pretty sure 80% of us have all moved on to having successful careers in stunts. Some of us decided not to do it anymore. But from that, it just branched this amazing camaraderie of just all the people that came from it. Like, now the guys that all come from it, like they're been huge stunt doubles on the biggest movies and shows, and like including me. There was Titans that was filmed there. There was Suicide Squad. There was anyways, the list goes on of just all the people that came from it, and that's part of the advice is like how do you get into it? Film some shit.
Right. Actually, that's an interesting segue into a great topic. So let's say there's someone out there listening to this podcast and they have some martial arts experience, right? Could be BJJ or, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, or even karate or anything, right? So for someone like that, they have no experience in acting, but they want to get into film stunt work. Yeah. What are some concrete steps that they can take?
So this one's like,
and I know there's no one way to do it.
No.
And this is also a hypothetical. If you could go back, rewind like however many years, knowing everything you know now. What are some concrete steps you would take? That would be the most efficient way to do it. And
I'd take gymnastics.
Yeah.
Straight up. I went and started learning gymnastics just for better aerial awareness. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing like crazy flips all the time or anything else like that. Like most of the shit, like I was saying, is you're falling. But aerial awareness, being on wires, is such a huge important thing. You're doing a lot of twists and falls. Sometimes you're doing it like just a generic flip, but that's a big part that I realized I was lacking. I was like, I have decent aerial awareness. I'm like, but it needs to get better. Right. So when I started jumping on trampolines, jumping into foam pits and stuff, there's no way I'll ever be as good as these gymnasts are. But also, they won't necessarily be as good at fighting as, let's say, I've been. But that's one of those things that you just got to learn.
So how would you go to like a gymnast school, or is there like gymnastics for film?
Depending on where you're going, like whether you're in Toronto or whether you're here, like Alan Kang runs, I think it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday Madness in Toronto.
It's drop-in, right?
It's drop-in. Yep. And he's in film, and there's so many people there that are in film that go. Right. It's great to go and learn with people that are doing it. And here's the challenging thing, and I know it's easier said than done, is don't go into those places looking for a job. Right. Because that energy is felt immediately. Of course. Like, go into network and meet and connect with people and learn. Yeah. But don't go there with that energy that like, okay, this is how I'm going to get into it. Because a lot of us have been working at it for so long that we're still hustling.
Of course.
Like, it's, constantly.
100%. This goes back to something you said earlier about like people just want to make it. They want to, it's almost a weird sense of entitlement. I feel like, you just kind of walk into a place and you feel like you're almost entitled to stuff. Yeah. Which is, there's people who've been at it for years, right? Yeah. So absolutely. So gymnastics is a skill that you definitly recommend.
I honestly think from gymnastics gives you flexibility, spine control, body control. All those things are very important in film and in film fighting. Right. I look at fight choreography. I was telling you before, I used to dance. So like I used to do hip hop, ballroom, I did dance hall, I did pop and lock.
Dance hall.
Yeah, I was all over the place. But when you would learn like any dance thing,
Yeah.
you know, it's you do learn it by steps.
Right.
You're not hitting anything hard. You're just learning how do I move my body or whatever. I look at fight choreography as the same thing.
Right.
You know, and I've talked to other dancers that are doing it now, is that they take it as the same thing. Is like, you can have your base of whatever martial arts that you have, but film fighting is almost like its own martial art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you throw your punches differently and your kicks differently. Like, I had to learn how to kick differently.
Of course.
Muay Thai kicks you cannot use in film fighting.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
No one wants to get hit with a shin bone. You know, so I had to learn more like the Taekwondo style.
It's hilarious to say that because I was just watching behind the scenes for Creed. And have you seen Creed?
Yeah.
So
of course,
Andre Ward is in it, right?
Yep.
But he's there learning how to box on film from a fight choreographer.
Yeah.
Right, and Andre Ward is like an undefeated, I don't know how many times world champion, right?
Yeah,
Going
I
back
think.
to the point
what is he now? 30, you know?
I think he's retired now
something?
technically. I don't know if he's.
Oh yeah, after his last fight.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to that point, right? And it just goes back to like it's a different medium.
It
right?
is. Yeah. Actually, it's funny because like I would do a bunch of different fight stuff like on film, and I go spar, and I get tagged a bunch. And I was like, oh yeah, shit, my fucking, because your muscle memory does change if you're not sharpening your tools over and over and over again.
Of course.
But it takes the right gym that you need to go to in order to like have that.
Right.
And then if you're here in Vancouver, Delta Gymnastics is a great place to go to. There's Cameron Gymnastics, but it's just a matter of like being able to go to those places. And both in Toronto and here, there's lots of schools that you can go to that other stunt people go to, that show it not only from a martial arts standpoint, but also show it from a film fighting standpoint. Right. And that's basically all it is how many skills can I learn? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily being a master at one. Right. Yes, it can help, but you don't have to necessarily be a master at one. It's kind of almost good to be like a jack of all trades.
Right.
They say like, you know, an empty cup is a little bit easier to teach and to learn and stuff. And I think there's a certain truth to it.
Sure.
Yeah. But that's the biggest thing, is just train as much as possible in different things. And I know there's a lot of the guys that are getting older, they don't want to do the fight stuff or falling on the ground anymore, so now they're learning how to do car stuff.
Okay.
Because now it's easier on their body, like,
right.
You know. And I know you're talking about frustrations of things. We can get into taking care of your body later, but but that's definitely a big part of it too.
Okay, great. So just for our listeners, in Toronto, Alan King has that weekly 3 drop-ins, and in Vancouver, what were the name of the gyms again?
It's Delta Gymnastics and Cameron Acro.
Okay, great. Delta and Cameron.
Yeah.
Great.
And that's for just gymnastics.
Right.
And if you go to those places and you want to start learning the martial arts stuff, any of those people there can teach you. And even actually at most of those places, there's always somebody warming up with kicks or playing with weapons. That's just a good way to start.
And both Delta and Cameron here are also film people who go there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a great way.
I mean, a lot of people go to the Delta, and there's like, you know, there's the Monkey Vault that's also there.
It's parkour. That's parkour.
That's parkour. Yeah, there's also like an open gym area, like the Trickers will be on there as well too. Just like here, there's a Flight Club where like a lot of the Trickers go to.
Okay. Tricking. You said Trickers. Yeah, what do you mean by Trickers?
Yeah, so like Trickers, it's again, this is more from how it used to be, but it's like a lot of it stemmed from the XMA or extreme martial arts.
Okay.
So, you know, like those are the guys that are doing like, you know, double corks or like some crazy like kicking combination into a cork or whatever else, you know, touchdown Reyes, all these different moves that someone throws. I'm not a tricker. I never learned it. And it's one of those things like some coordinators hate trickers. Not, I won't say hate, but they just don't like them.
Why is that?
It's just their movement, the way that they do things, their forms. Like movement is such an interesting thing when it translates to film. Like, you know, you can tell if somebody is more of a gymnast than a tricker. It's just the way that they move, their way that they've formed their body mechanics over so long. Is
it more that the gymnast would aim for efficiency and a tricker would aim for like showmanship? Like, and is that why?
I don't necessarily think that, because they both have that showmanship aspect to it. It's just a different way that they throw things. I mean, trickers tend to throw things off axis. It's not generally a linear movement. Gymnasts have a lot of linear movements.
Okay.
Like, you know, if you're doing like a tumbling, for example, it's straight. Maybe you'll do another double and then land.
Right.
But it's very linear in the movements. But a tricker will tend to go off axis.
I see.
stuff.
And I can see now why a gymnast would be better for film, because, it's easier to capture that linear movement, whereas a tricker may be better on stage, more of that lateral movement.
Yeah, and also what's happened with films like The Raid, John Wick,
Yeah.
Atomic Blonde, and even with UFC being as popular as it is, people understand fight mechanics differently now.
Right.
They see that crazy acrobatic stuff and they go, nah, it's not real. So they see things like John Wick, The Raid, and everything. Even Bourne, when Bourne came out, it was like, holy shit. The people see that and they go, like, that feels more gritty or more real.
Right.
And I think that's our understanding by watching things like MMA, that you go, oh, this is how a fight is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, granted, some people pull off some really cool moves, but they're starting to understand now, like, oh, that crazy Hong Kong action style fighting, which is more like the tricking style, with the wire works and stuff like that, isn't quite real.
Right.
It's great for the superhero genres, because it's a little bit bigger movement, but people have understood now, like, oh, that's not as realistic as we thought it was.
Right.
So it's kind of cool to watch that happen. Mm-hmm. And I still think there's a time and a place for it, like the superhero films, but it's one of those things that people are starting to understand. Real gritty style way of fighting has starting to translate into film now. Right. And you start seeing that. And it's kind of cool to me because that's how I've learned stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just different.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. So John Wick is a great example of that, right? Would you say John Wick kind of changed the game a little bit, or was there something before John Wick that did?
I think Bourne Identity, the Bourne things.
The Bourne series.
I mean, I like Paul Greengrass and everything. Unfortunately, I think we missed a lot of it with that shaky cam.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, oh, fuck the shaky cam thing. But they still, like, when they watched the fighting, they were like, whoa. Like, because there was a grittiness to it. There was that close quarters, all that stuff. A lot of it was, like, Filipino martial arts, that I think there was a little bit of Jeet Kune Do in there as well, too. But a lot of it was, I believe, was mainly all Cali, FMA type of style, close quarter combat. I mean, that's in there with Krav Maga and everything else like that. But Krav, like, takes different martial arts and puts it together. Same with Jeet Kune Do is, like, it's an amalgamation. Even in the Santo method, it's an amalgamation of all these different martial arts. That's why Bruce Lee was way ahead of his time.
Right.
And a lot of people they don't understand why. And that is why his ability to transition from one martial arts to another, depending on the situation, to not be like, oh, it can only just be stand-up fighting. It can be, I'm going to break your arm and then I'm going to take you down and then break your leg, move on to the next guy, or use your body against this guy and things like that.
Right. Makes you more unpredictable, gives you more tools in the toolbox.
100%. And it's an efficiency, moving from one thing to the next thing. So I think, for me personally, I think Bourne was one of the first ones that people started going to go, oh, what's this? Right. And then I started to see it more in different films. Like I saw it in The Raid. The Raid was one of the most popular foreign films, in the longest time.
Where's that film?
That was in Indonesia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like that was Salat was the style of fighting. They had like the combat knives that were in there. A lot of like devastating bone breaking hits. With Salat, there's different level changes to it. You're not just standing up. You're going to your knees, taking the guy's leg down with you as you move on. Right. So people start to see that and go like, oh, this is really gritty. I mean, yeah, Old Boy was so long ago, but a lot of people forget it. And they saw like the Brolin version. Yeah. It didn't have the same feel.
It did not, absolutely not.
Which I still think Josh Brolin is an amazing actor. I think they missed that feel to it that made the first one so good. But I think, and then eventually, when you got to John Wick, finally got to a place where a lot of us have talked about is like, you do all this amazing fight choreography, and then this shaky cam bullshit, this is what I want to call it, and cutting off all this amazing fight choreo and you're just missing it. Right. It makes you feel like, oh my God, like all this stuff is happening because like, the camera's moving and because it's so close on the frame, it feels like so many things are going on, but you're missing what's actually happening. Right. for me, looking at it like this standpoint is that from, the acting to the translation of the stunts is that telling your story as a performer on the stunt side, I think is so important, just like from the acting side.
Right.
You have a story arc in the fight. If you have a good fight choreographer, they understand how
to tell the story within
tell within it and
Right.
have even an arc in the fight.
Right.
It's almost like, this is how I can translate it. It's almost like, let's say you and I were having a very emotional scene, and all of a sudden I start doing shaky cam.
Right.
You're missing what's happening and everything.
Of course, absolutely.
And so I think where John Wick changed the game is they had a lot of lock off shots. The camera didn't fucking move.
Right.
But you had a nice medium shot. You saw the actors doing their own stunts, because they trained so long before. Keanu's been training martial arts for a long time.
Right.
And you saw him doing all these different things, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But you didn't miss all the moves. Right. And I think that's what's changed the game.
That's interesting. I think for someone who's interested in working in stunts, like those films are good to study, right? So Bourne, and then watch the evolution from, like you said, the Bourne series to John Wick now.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there something in television that's kind of emulating that quality? Because these are all films. Because I find a lot of television is like, in Vancouver especially, you have the whole superhero genre, which is a different style of action.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, is there any television series right now out there, it doesn't have to be Vancouver, that's kind of emulating that realistic, gritty style?
Yes and no. I've seen elements of it in certain ones. Like all the CW shows here, and I've worked on them as well too, is a little bit more of the superhero style. So a little bit more that has its grittiness to it, but it's very big and grandiose, and a lot of the moves and a lot of wire work, that kind of stuff, because it's part of that genre, so it belongs there. But I have seen grittier things in, for example, like The Punisher.
Okay.
With John Barathol. I've seen the elements of that gritty, close quarter, just brutal, beat down type of thing. Even Daredevil had some aspects of it. When he was using his sticks, right. And even like his general movement. Yeah, there's a couple flary moves in there, but there's also some gritty moments that were in there. But other than that, not in that same style. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised, and I've thought about this too. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up doing like a John Wick
series?
A series of before he's gotten to that point.
Okay.
Oh shit, there is actually one show I just thought of that had some of that, was the Taken TV show.
Yeah? Okay.
There was aspects of it because that is part of that character.
Right.
Is that Clive Standen was the actor.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was aspects of that grittier,
right,
bone-breaking, brutal stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It almost has to be, like you said, the action choreography is all a part of the story, right?
Yeah.
It has to fit in. So it almost has to be a part of the character. The character has to come from a gritty background. If he's the Flash, he's not going to fight in that gritty style.
Right.
Right? So it almost, like you said, has to be part of the story. So I haven't watched Daredevil or The Punisher.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's a part of, that's kind of their world.
It's part of their world, because for them, they don't really have a superpower.
Right.
There's mystical elements to them, but their way of fighting is more brutal, more, it's not like a Luke Cage where he's just brutalizing and throwing people and stuff like that. Theirs is more, they have to, go more the traditional, almost like the Krav Maga, Kali, FMA, Jeet Kune Do style of just...
Personally, I would love to see a well-made Assassin's Creed series.
That would be friggin' awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially like even, because the hallmark of Assassin's Creed is like stealth and avoid fighting if you can.
Stealth, avoid fighting. And then when he did, it was very like, especially with the hidden blades. Like that, like there's so many cool things that you would be able to do with that. And then hiding the bodies and stuff.
Right.
Like there's some cool elements that are in there.
Yeah.
I would actually totally...
I think we were both seeing our like eyes light up and salivating at the thought of like an Assassin's Creed.
I played that game since the beginning.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, this game is so cool.
Yeah.
Especially because like you could play in different styles.
Right.
But yeah, if they did that, in a show, man, that would be kind of cool. You know, here's the thing, and I gotta say this because I just saw The Equalizer 2 today.
Okay.
And I saw another trailer for Robin Hood.
Oh, really? Who's the new Robin Hood?
Edgerton. He plays Eggsy in Kingsman.
No, I haven't watched it, but okay. So what did it feel like, the trailer?
Just
why again?
Why again? I like Taron Egerton. That's the actor's name. He's actually a really good actor, and I think he's got like some good physicality to him. I think he does some parkour and stuff.
Right.
But so I understand that he's like, okay, cool. Here's an iconic character, but man, I just like, why? Like the challenging thing that I keep seeing this in film is like people are so afraid of doing new stuff. Mm-hmm. I know it's a risk, but some of the things that people have been doing that is new, look at how successful it ends up actually being when they end up doing it.
Right.
So I think that's the challenging thing that I have when I see stuff like that. I'm just like, why? Like, do something new.
Right.
You know, like there's some things that I think, okay, great. Like the movie It. Mm-hmm. I think Skarsgård did a hell of a fucking job. Yeah. And it was creepy.
They're doing a sequel now too, right?
I heard that too.
Yeah.
But like with things like that, I'm like, cool. It's been long enough. Sure. Right. Do a remake. That's fine.
That's an interesting topic. I mean, like, you know, this is not just related to action, but part of why is because studios don't want to lose money. They don't want to take risks. You know, these franchises have a built-in audience. And what I find challenging is like, you know, if we can categorize films into like action based or non-action, you still have a pretty thriving independent film community where you can make films, but as soon as you add action, like right away, that's increasing the budget quite a bit. So I find like there's 100%. Not a lot of good independent action films just because of the money aspect, right?
Yeah, when I was in Toronto, there's such a huge independent film community there, especially with horror films. Right. So I would help do the action directing for a bunch of those films. And it's exactly like what you said, is like the budget's not there. They needed like help of how the actors have to fall down or how to choreograph a fight sequence between the actors and stuff, which is a challenge because now you're like, well, you're getting actors that not everyone has the ability for moving or understanding how their body actually works. Yeah. And so now you've got, you know, the actors doing their own stuff. And it doesn't always look the greatest, but you got to kind of make it work. But, you know, yeah, the budget ends up going on the union side. Mm-hmm. It goes up hugely because of that. Now, granted, you get what you pay for. You know, you're going to get the best out of whatever it is if you've, you know, got the right people involved. Right. And I think it's a matter of also trust, because what happens a lot of times is if you get a director that doesn't understand action, you know, when you're looking at a stunt coordinator, their main job is to help direct the action in the best way possible. That's really their job. They're going to help out, you know, camera movements. They're going to help out to do whatever. And sometimes directors don't fully trust that. But then there's things that happen, like the stunt coordinator isn't necessarily there in the editing bay. Right. So you end up losing a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point, because, you know, if the director doesn't see the action as a critical part of the story, they're just like, oh, okay, let's just insert action here, right? And it's not telling the story. Yep. And yeah.
And I've worked on so many projects like that. Right. That you're like, man, so glad we did, you know, 2 days of 8-hour fight rehearsals to like see nothing in the product that doesn't tell the story in the same way. Right. And then that's even ego removed.
Of course.
Like,
of course.
To be honest, it's just like what you said. It's like, I get that sometimes for, you know, when it comes to the time and everything else like that, their time allowance for, you know, they got to cut certain parts out or whatever because, you know, I got to shorten the film up or whatever, make it, you know, feel better. There's certain things that get cut out that you could tell they didn't know what they were looking at when they were editing it. So I think that's why sometimes having, like, you know, that's why, like with John Wick, you have two directors that know stunts, because that's what they come from, helping there for the editing, for what takes sell, don't sell. And that's why it was so polished and so clean and so good.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.